The screaming started on Catalioman 7. Not the screams of terror, but the agonizing shriek of a world being consumed, absorbed, rewritten. It was the Xylos swarm, a devastating, biologically engineered species, a tidal wave of chitin and hunger. They weren't invaders. They were the universe's ultimate predators, an apex life form that consumed all biomass, all forms of life, converting it into more of themselves. They were relentless, adapting to any environmental or biological defense, a force of pure, unyielding consumption whose victory was universal ecological collapse. They had devoured the Heliostriders, a civilization of living light plants, absorbing their radiant energy until their crystalline forms became inert husks, mere fuel for the burgeoning swarm. Then the chrono beasts, beings of immense temporal stability, found their very existence unraveling as the swarm consumed their biological anchors to time, rendering their temporal distortions irrelevant. The Xylos simply adapted, their cellular structures resequencing, their digestive enzymes evolving on the fly to process any defense, any unique biology. Nothing stopped them, nothing even slowed them. On the human frontier world of Ethelberg, the news arrived as a chilling, static-laced last transmission from a sister colony. They're changing, they're becoming us. No, we're becoming them. Run. Don't let them, the feed cut out, replaced by the omnipresent, chittering hum of the swarm. Squad leader Kalen Jax, a veteran of the orbital drop forces, watched the radar blips. Not fleets, but an endless, creeping crimson tied across the sensor map, already engulfing the moon of Lunar Shield. His operatives, hardened by countless planetary skirmishes, were pale. This wasn't war. This was an extinction event, a biological singularity. Status report, Kalen barked, his voice tight. Combat biologist Dr. Lyra Vaskova pointed at a bioscanner, her face grim. Sir, they're here and they're adapting. Faster than predicted. Their initial wave just breached the perimeter bioshield on the northern continent. Our sonic emitters, they just absorbed the frequency, adapted their chitin to resonate with it. They're multiplying exponentially. Our last-ditch bioweapon, the Thanatos strain, they consumed it, repurposed it as fuel. It only made them stronger. The swarm was upon them. A living tide of segmented bodies and razor limbs that washed over the perimeter, converting soil to nutrient paste, ancient stonewoods to fungal growths, fallen soldiers to new, grotesque Xylos forms. Conventional weapons did nothing but break off pieces that immediately grew into new, hungry organisms. It was a cancer on a cosmic scale. We can't stop them, a Comstech screamed, vaporizing under a wave of acidic enzymes as the first Xylos breached their bunker. Kalen felt the cold dread. They had no retreat, no sanctuary. This was the end. But then an idea born of desperation and the sheer, brutal history of humanity's survival sparked in Lyra's eyes. Colonel, Lyra yelled over the shriek of melting metal. The biolabs, the Genesis Project. The Genesis Project. A top-secret, highly controversial research initiative. It wasn't about fighting alien life. It was about rewriting human life. Designed for deep space colonization, it explored radical, often monstrous, forms of transhumanism, altering human biology, not just for survival, but for thriving in the most hostile environments. Genetic redesigns that warped limb structures, metabolic overhauls that repurposed organs, even limited forms of rapid, controlled self-mutation. It was humanity's ultimate fail-safe, a horrifying transformation option. The ethical restraints, Lyra, Kalen began, but she cut him off. Ethics are for when you have a future, Colonel. This isn't about ethical, it's about existence. We can't beat them, but we can become something they can't consume. Or something that poisons them. There was no time for hesitation. As the swarm breached the inner sanctum, What remained of Ethelberg's population, soldiers, scientists, civilians, made a desperate, irreversible pilgrimage to the Genesis Project's biochambers. The process was agonizing, terrifying, stripping away familiar forms and identities. Limbs elongated, skin hardened into composite plating, internal organs reconfigured for new, alien metabolisms. Some became calcified, dense, and unpalatable. Others turned their bodies into living, highly acidic batteries. Still others developed symbiotic bacteria that converted Xylo's biomass into an inert, useless waste product. Humanity wasn't just adapting, it was mutating with brutal, calculated desperation. The Xylos swarm, encountering these newly transformed humans, faltered. Their relentless consumption algorithms encountered errors. A Xylos unit attempting to absorb a chitin human found its digestive enzymes failing, its mandibles dulling against the new, dense bone. Another tried to engulf an acid human, only to melt from within as its biomass was consumed by corrosive internal defenses. They weren't just encountering resistance, they were encountering anti-food, a biology that was either indigestible, toxic, or actively detrimental to their growth. For the first time, the Xylos swarm did not multiply. It sickened. It stagnated. Segments of the collective biomass began to break down, its internal cohesion dissolving as it consumed something it could not process, something that actively reversed its consumption. Kalen, his own body now a living shield of hardened, regenerative tissue, watched a Xylos vanguard dissolve around Lyra, whose skin now pulsed with a faint, iridescent glow. They were still human in a way, but the definition had been stretched to its absolute breaking point. The Xylos swarm, unable to process this new, horrifyingly adapted biomass, began to retreat. Not in a rout, but in a slow, agonizing process of biological rejection. It pulled back from Ethelberg, leaving behind patches of sterile, lifeless earth, places where it had attempted to consume humanity, and in doing so had poisoned itself. Humanity hadn't defeated the swarm with firepower, they had forced it into a metabolic surrender. The planet of Ethelberg was safe, technically, but at what cost? The survivors, once human, now walked as living, breathing nightmares of biological necessity. They carried the victory in their very flesh, a constant reminder of the horrific price of adaptation. The galaxy learned of the iron flesh of humanity, a species that would sacrifice its very form to survive. Other species, while safe from the Xylos swarm's immediate threat, now viewed humanity with a mixture of awe and profound revulsion. They were resilient, yes, but also utterly terrifying in their willingness to become something else entirely. Years later, deep within the repurposed biolabs of Ethelberg, now a fortress of hardened, self-regenerating materials, Lyra studied a shimmering, calcified sample of what was once human tissue. "We won," Kalen rumbled, his voice deeper, his new physiology making subtle changes to his vocal cords. "We survived." Lyra looked up. Her eyes, though still human, held a new, ancient wisdom. "We survived," she echoed, "by embracing the monstrous, by asking, what part of us is truly indispensable? And the answer, Colonel, was far less than we ever imagined." The Xylos swarm never returned to human space, forever scarred by the indigestible meal that was humanity's desperate, terrifying, and utterly self-destructive will to live.